Welcome to Front Office Pros. After we saw Odell Beckham Jr. sign with the Baltimore Ravens, we knew we had to discuss our Dynasty wide receiver rankings with tiers. We'll be going through 50 wide receivers, not including rookies, and the reason being is Joe and I feel that draft capital and landing spot will play a huge role. Before we get started, we are a new channel, so if you like this content, we ask you to smash that like button so others can find this video as well. Joe, let's get to it.
Hike!
So 10 notable receivers that I left off in the tiered rankings were Wan'Dale Robinson, Rondale Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Alec Pierce, Chase Claypool, Romeo Doubs, Josh Palmer, Michael Thomas, Adam Thielen, and Hunter Renfrow. So starting off in tier 10, this is a combination of players that I'm out on, as well as players that I think have potential, but they just have not really done it in a consistent way. So I've got DJ Chark, who most people probably want to have him in their top 50, but he has had a wide receiver 2 season with the Jaguars. I think if he makes a connection with that rookie quarterback, whatever comes in, I think he has a really good potential to do really well. Gabe Davis and Bateman, higher draft capital players, Bateman being a former first-round pick. But for me, neither one of them have been able to meet expectations. And I think the Bills could draft a receiver. So that's why I have them there. I'm out on Deontay Johnson. I think that George Pickens is going to be the wide receiver 1 there. And I'm not even sure if Deontay Johnson will be with the team much longer. I think they'll cut him. Mooney, for me, I think there's not going to be enough volume in that offense to support him and the likes of, Cole Kmet, DJ Moore, Chase Claypool, etc. Then you've got Odell Beckham, who just signed with the Ravens. He is a very talented player, but can he stay healthy and be on the field for them? And then Jacoby Myers, as long as he can continue his production, I almost thought about leaving him out of the 50, but with that familiarity with McDaniels, I felt like I needed to have him in there.
I don't think, it's a bad tier 10 list that you got there, Steve. Honestly, don't really mind the guys you left off either. I guess the one differential is that I'm not as low as you is on Deontay Johnson. I wouldn't write him off completely. I kind of agree that Pickens probably would take over the number 1 spot in the offense, but I still think there's going to be a place for Deontay Johnson in that Steelers offense, even if it's, the number 2 role on the offense. He's still a very talented receiver and a good route runner. So I think they'll figure out a way to get the ball to him.
So in tier 9, I've got 2 veterans who have been wide receiver 1s in their career, and then 2 other players who are a little bit younger, but also veterans, but haven't been able to perform consistently. So I've got Mike Evans. I think he's going to have a huge drop in production because his game really relies on the deep ball. And now that Tom Brady is gone and Baker Mayfield is in, I have concerns about him. I wanted to put him up. I've been an Evans fan for a long time. But I couldn't do it. Then you got Cortland Sutton and Juju, both players who are relatively around the same age. Juju going to New England and a new offense. Just don't know what to expect from him. I think he could be good, and he has been good, so I put him there. And Cortland Sutton, a lot of buzz around him last year. Wasn't able to put it all together. I'm hoping that offense is better next year. But in the end, I have him in tier 9. And then Brent Cook's coming to Dallas. I think he has some potential. He will definitely be the receiver 2 in that offense now, and he has been a receiver 1 in the past. Just depend on how much Mike McCarthy runs the ball compared to passing.
Yeah, I don't really disagree with much on your tier 9, Steve. I mean, like you said, it's kind of some veteran guys on there. It's interesting with Sutton is I do expect the offense to be better. I just wonder how much the impact of having Tim Patrick back this year will impact him. And, I think the tier 9 is potentially a fair spot for him.
So in tier 8, these are some younger players and some players that were rookies last year that I think have a lot of potential. But for me, I feel like either I'm down on them or I haven't seen them enough, their production, that I'm putting them in a higher tier. So I got Michael Pittman. I've always been kind of low on Pittman. Now you're entering in a new landscape with who knows who the quarterback is going to be. Colts are kind of in no man's land with the 4th pick. They're not going to be able to possibly get their top guy. So I have concerns about him going forward in that offense. There have even been rumblings about him getting traded in the past. So I don't even know how much he's in their long-term plans. Marquise Hollywood Brown, I like him a lot. I think he's better in Arizona than he was in Baltimore because he has that connection with Kyler Murray. But when Kyler Murray left, he wasn't as involved. He was injured a little bit. So time will tell. I think he has potential to move up, but I want to see him and Kyler start connecting. I want to see it before I believe it. Then I got Jahan Dotson, Sky Moore. These are guys who did show potential, and I think they have the ability to rise up in tiers. But again, these are players that I want to see it to believe it, and I haven't seen it yet. So this is a great opportunity for both of them going into next season, but time will tell. And then lastly, Brandon Ayuk, I probably should be higher on him. He's just one of those guys I never get that excited about. There's just so many options in that offense, and so for me, I feel like he ends up being an afterthought. Will be interesting. His rookie contract is going to be coming up here in a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see if the 49ers end up keeping him or not. But that's who I got in my tier 8.
Yeah, your tier 8's interesting. I'm higher on Ayuk and Pittman more than you, as you probably would have known through our different talks that we've had and stuff. So I probably put Pittman and Ayuk higher. Maybe even into the next tier 7 there. But other than that, I think your believe it to see it to believe it guys make a lot of sense here in tier 8 though.
So my tier 7, it's my see it to believe it, but I think they have even more potential. So kind of a similar thought process with tier 7, tier 8. I just think these guys have that much more of a ceiling. So the first guy I got in there is Calvin Ridley. Obviously he had a suspension with the gambling incident. He was very successful as a wide receiver 1 in Atlanta, now going to Jacksonville, to be with Trevor Lawrence now. So I think that offense could support him, but it's just so hard to know, what kind of player will we see with him coming back into the NFL, and how well will he fare. But I have him at tier 7 because he is still young enough, and I think his potential is definitely there. Then I've got Kadarius Toney, who I think is more dynamic than Sky Moore. That's why I put him in tier 7. But with the exodus of Juju Smith-Schuster and McCole Hardman, definitely some extra opportunities in that Kansas City offense, and we'll see if he's able to capitalize on those. Then I got Treylon Burks. There really isn't a wide receiver 1 in Tennessee. He definitely has that opportunity, but who's going to be throwing him the ball? I don't think it's going to be Tannehill. Probably better off for him to get a rookie quarterback and be able to build some rapport, but wasn't able to stay healthy last year, so time will tell with him. But I like him more than Christian Watson. I think at the end of the day, when I evaluated them going into the draft, I just had Treylon Burks higher. I like Watson a lot. If Rodgers was still there, I think it would be different, but just don't know what to expect with him and Jordan Love. I want to see it to believe it. And same with Drake London. I'm really low on Drake London compared to the rest of the industry. When it comes to Drake London, I know he's a big-bodied receiver, can really get up there and high point the ball. I just am worried about his ability to separate. You saw that a little bit at USC, and in evaluating him, that was my big concern with him. So now you got Desmond Ridder there. I don't really know if he can support the likes of Drake London. So just that type of receiver, I just wish he had more separation. That's why I have him so low.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Drake London sentiment. Interesting, though, that you really like Trey Burks more than Watson, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I just like the potential of Burks. He kind of fits that type of receiver that I think can really succeed in the NFL. With Watson, it's a good question. I mean, maybe I should have had Watson ahead of him. I had Burks higher in my ratings, and like I said, with Jordan Love being the quarterback, I just didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, well, I think I have more confidence in Love finding Watson than I do whoever's going to be quarterbacking in Tennessee to get the ball to Burks more. But overall, it's an interesting tier, and I don't think there's anybody in this group that I'd really move up into the next tier.
So my tier 6 has got a lot of veterans in it and some guys that have been really good who are younger pieces. But that's the reason why I have them in tier 6, because this is a Dynasty Rankings. And these players only have so much longer. So the first guy I got in there is Amari Cooper, much higher on Amari Cooper than most other people in the industry. I feel like Cooper's just consistent. He was a top receiver last year with Jacoby Brissett as the quarterback. A lot of people faded him, but he still was able to produce. Now going into year 2 with Deshaun Watson, I expect a lot of great things for Amari Cooper, and that's why I have him as high. Then I've got Keenan Allen next. Keenan Allen is a wide receiver 1 all day long when he can stay healthy. I do think that this might be his last year in LA, so that's the tough part, but they're a high-powered offense, and I do like Keenan Allen, but I think it's just the age factor why I have him here. Then I got DeAndre Hopkins. He's also a little bit older. This is with me assuming that he's not going to be on the Cardinals and he's going to be traded. Depending on where he gets traded, I could definitely see myself moving him up. But as of now, with not knowing where he'll play, I think this makes the most sense for him to be in this tier. Then I got Terry McLaurin. He's been consistently good with bad quarterback play. I'm not a huge Terry McLaurin fan. I drafted him last year in a redraft league, and he's just, he was a disappointment, I felt like, for me. So he's good. He's a good player. He does well. I just wonder what his ceiling can truly be. Then I got Chris Godwin. Really like Chris Godwin. But who's going to be the quarterback in Tampa Bay? I do think because of the receiver that he is, I think he'll more likely continue to be productive versus Mike Evans. So that's why I have him in tier 6. And Tyler Lockett, I'm a little bit higher than others on him, but he continues to get disrespected. I mean, the guy continues to be on a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 borderline. No one expected Geno Smith to have the season that he did. But I expect that probably be much of the same, or maybe a little bit of a drop off. And then who knows with those 2 first-round picks, maybe they draft a rookie quarterback and develop him. And then that'll be the next quarterback that throws to Tyler Lockett. But I think he just continues to get disrespected. And personally, I think he belongs in this tier.
Yeah, I agree with you on Tyler Lockett. He does continue to get disrespected, and people forget about him a lot. I thought he was going to be affected most by the loss of Russell Wilson in the offense, but Geno Smith really found a way to get him the ball as well. He seemed to have the mind meld with Russell Wilson, but with Geno Smith, he was just as good. So, I like him here. Terry McLaurin, he's interesting. I think he's a good receiver, but, I think I like these guys better. I might even push him down to the tier below.
Oh, so you put Terry McLaurin at tier 7?
I think I put Terry McLaurin in tier 7. I'm a little lower on him. I like his talent. It's always been the kind of the quarterback play to hold him back, and it'll be interesting to see how much Jahan Dotson coming into his second year affects him as well.
Yeah, I wanted to put McLaurin lower, but I just felt like he needed to be there. But he's not a guy I'm that excited about. I'm probably more. Yeah. Even though I have him in tier 6, I definitely am more excited about the players in tier 7, but it's just one of those things where it's like he's been consistent these past few years. It's hard to not put him in that tier. Just because I have him in that tier doesn't necessarily mean it's like guys who I'd rather trade McLaurin and get guys like in that tier 7 and maybe a little bit plus than have a guy like McLaurin.
Yeah, that would make total sense. I'd agree with that.
So transitioning over to tier number 5, this is like my favorite tier that I'm going to be talking about because this to me is my potential tier. And these are the guys that I get excited about. These are guys that I'm trying to target for because they haven't hit. There are some that have done really well, but I think most of them outside one haven't hit their ceiling. And so I'm excited to see what's ahead. So the first guy I got is Jameson Williams. He was the receiver I ranked the highest last year in the draft class for wide receivers in 2022. And for me, we didn't really get to see a lot of him because of his return from an ACL injury, but he just is so dynamic with his speed. I think if he's used properly, he could be a really, really dynamic receiver. Just like his style of play, some would disagree. Some would put London ahead of him. But to me, I just like his style of play, and that's why I have him here in tier 5. Next, I have George Pickens. Huge George Pickens fan. Pittsburgh is a wide receiver factory. They know how to, really get the most out of their receivers. And for me, George Pickens, you saw the contested catches that he was able to make. I know some believe that his value is inflated because of those catches, but he just didn't have enough opportunities. I'd like to see hopefully him and Pickett have more of a rapport and make sure that he's more of a staple in that offense. Next, I got Christian Kirk, and he's still relatively young. I mean, he had a really great season. No one expected him to do as well as he did, I don't believe. Christian Kirk was a tough one to place, but at the end of the day, it's hard to deny what he did last year. The question will be, will Ridley take away from some of his volume? Then I got Mike Williams. This is a guy I've always liked. Obviously he has that spectacular catch radius. Never can stay healthy, but why I put him here was mainly because I think maybe once Keenan Allen is no longer with the team next year, maybe it's Mike Williams' time to shine at that point where he really ends up being that guy. I might be a little high on him, but that's kind of where I have him right now. Then I got Jerry Jeudy. I think Jerry Jeudy, former first-round pick out of Alabama, I really expect him to take a really big jump this year with Sean Payton's offense and Russell Wilson. We already saw flashes of him do that last year. You could see Russ really had a connection with him near the end of the season. So really excited to see what's happening in 2023 and beyond. And then lastly, this will surprise folks, but I've got Elijah Moore in tier 5. Elijah Moore is such a talented receiver out of Ole Miss, getting drafted in the second round. He just was buried on that depth chart in New York and never got the opportunities. Now he's going to be teamed up with Deshaun Watson. I think he's just going to feast in Cleveland. He's super young. He's the type of guy that I think his potential is really off the charts. He's a great change of direction type of player. And so I think his ability to separate, you'll see that. And I think he's going to have his best season by far in Cleveland.
Yeah, I agree with you on Elijah Moore for sure. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do with Deshaun Watson in Cleveland and, getting to play alongside a guy like Amari Cooper as well on that team. I think the Browns should be able to unlock that potential. And, he's no longer in that crowded receiver room like he was with the Jets. So I'm really excited for him. And, as you alluded to with this tier, it's interesting. You got Jameson Williams on there. I do like him. It's just funny because it's the guy that we've seen the least out of. But, the fact that Detroit got rid of DJ Chark, let him go, we should be seeing Jameson Williams, more on the field this year. And we did see a couple of explosive plays for him. So if that's kind of the plays that we're going to get, with Jared Goff, I think the tier 5, could be fitting as I'm excited to see what he can do, with more opportunities this year. But as you mentioned, I think the one guy that, everyone could kind of pick on would be the Mike Williams here. I think it's interesting. If he could stay healthy, he definitely deserved to be there. I guess we'll see.
So going over to tier 4, I'm starting off with wide receiver Cooper Kupp. And my main reason for that is because I'm very concerned about Stafford. I know he's the starter as of right now, but that neck, spine, back injury, or whatever it is that he had, has a possibility to make it a career-ending injury. One bad hit, and I think he's going to, put up the cleats. So to me, I'm really concerned about that. And if it's not going to be Matt Stafford, then who's going to be the quarterback to be throwing to Cooper Kupp? I mean, we had Jared Goff, and now we have Matthew Stafford, but they have nothing else in the bullpen to then partner with Cooper Kupp, and he is getting older. So that to me is where, can they, if Matthew Stafford is able to stay there, okay, but if not, what do they do? Do they trade Kupp? I don't know. It'll be really interesting. Then you got Devontae Adams. Again, I don't know what to expect with him and Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think he's going to get the volume that he did with Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers. So obviously he's a great player, but just because of that instability that I think he could have now with Garoppolo as the quarterback, I have him in tier 4. Then I got DK Metcalf. He's a younger receiver. I was down on him as of last year with Geno Smith, but he proved me wrong and a lot of other people wrong. I just think he's a really dynamic player. He really is a game breaker. Just question will be, who will be the quarterback for the future, because I don't think it's going to be Geno for much longer. Then I got DJ Moore. Then I got wide receiver DJ Moore. I wanted to put him lower. I really did. But it's hard to do so because based on the quarterback play he's had in his career, he has been able to do really well. And you could argue that the best quarterback he will have played with now will be Justin Fields starting next season. So it's hard for me to put him any lower. There'll be maybe some people would put him even higher than tier 4, but I can't put him any higher than that. I just don't know if Fields will give him enough opportunities. And then I got Debo. Debo, he's an all-around talent. Obviously involved in many ways. When it comes to the Niners, he's like a Swiss Army knife. I'm not a huge Debo fan for the future. There's a lot of opportunities, I think, with that 49ers offense. So I don't really know. Will he continue to sustain those opportunities? But hard to not put him in this tier because of what he's been able to do.
Can't believe you have Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel in the same tier. I definitely would not have had that. I think Kupp might be one of those guys who's potentially quarterback proof. I think Stafford. I think that's a legitimate concern that you have. I wouldn't be surprised. I was kind of surprised. I thought he might retire. Guess there's still time for that just because of the neck injury. We really haven't heard an update since the season on like how that's going or what's the extent of it. But as far as Cooper Kupp goes, I think he deserves at least to be tier 3, maybe tier 2. This guy is just a phenomenal wide receiver. And like I said, I think he might be quarterback proof, just like I think Devontae Adams is potentially quarterback proof as well. I don't think there's a big drop off from Jimmy G to Derek Carr. Maybe he doesn't get as many targets as he did, a season ago, but I still think his production is going to be there. And like you mentioned, I think tier 4 is a fine spot for DJ Moore. I'm excited to see what he's going to do with Chicago with Justin Fields. But you're right, the passing volume of Chicago, we just got to see what it's going to be, and how that's going to equal out and how many targets he'll end up getting. But I agree that Justin Fields is potentially the best quarterback he's had.
So transitioning over to tier 3, I think this tier is what dynasty owners dream of. I think these are some of the players that people are most excited about, that they really are going to take the next leap and maybe jump into that tier 2, tier 1 conversation. So first I've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's just been a target machine, over the past few years. Hard to not have him there. I think he will continue to produce as he has in the past. Question will be, will he have we seen his ceiling, or will they get any better? You got Jameson Williams there, so can Jared Goff support both? Time will tell. Then we've got T. Higgins. T. Higgins has been able to perform really well alongside Jamar Chase. Just hasn't been as consistent and hasn't been able to stay as healthy. Question will be, will he stay with the Bengals long term? Will they be able to keep him and Burrow and Chase under the salary cap? Next, I got Devonta Smith. He was a huge riser for me this year. Was not expecting him to do as well as he did. I even remember when we talked about him when he first broke out against Washington. I had my doubts. I wanted to see it to believe it, but he proved me wrong. Really was able to produce on a regular basis. It was kind of the 1B to the 1A of A.J. Brown. So really like his future moving forward. Then you got Chris Olave. I really like the potential of him with Derek Carr. We talked about him on some previous videos, but really am thinking that's going to be a great pairing for Olave and really could allow him to take the next step forward. And then lastly, you've got Garrett Wilson. I know, Joe, you're a huge Garrett Wilson fan. For me, the question will be, if Aaron Rodgers comes, and if Aaron Rodgers does come, then in my mind, I will push Wilson ahead. But for now, I'm going to keep him where I have him because I think that he can't have Zach Wilson as his quarterback. It's got to be somebody else. And right now, he's the only guy on the roster. So as of right now, I'm a prisoner of the moment, and I need to see who ends up, being the quarterback for the Jets.
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. If Aaron Rodgers isn't the New York Jets starting quarterback come week 1, I'm definitely not as excited about Garrett Wilson, as I definitely would be. We saw the points per game that he averaged, when it wasn't Zach Wilson and when it was, and he was wide receiver 1 without him. And, definitely not a wide receiver one with him. So definitely a big difference there. As far as the rest of your tier 3 goes, I don't really have any complaints there. I think I pretty much agree with what you got.
So heading over to tier number 2, we've got 4 players. First, I got wide receiver A.J. Brown. Some would say he should be in tier 1, but I feel like there's a decent gap between him and the other guys I have in tier 1. He's a little bit older, but he took a real big step in his career after he got traded from Tennessee to Philadelphia. Had a dynamic season with Jalen Hurts, and so that's why I think he belongs in this tier. The next guy I got is wide receiver Jalen Waddle. Again, I don't think he's a tier 1 player. But he has really been able to do really well in that Miami Dolphins offense. Took a real big step forward with Tua this year in the Mike McDaniel system. Question will be, what's going to happen with Tua? Will Tua continue to stay there? We know Tyreek Hill is going to be retiring after the 2025 season, so it's going to be Waddle's show from here on out. After that, but his speed is electric. And that you can't produce and manufacture speed. You either have it or you don't have it. Next guy I got is Stephon Diggs. So long as he's with Buffalo, I can't see why he wouldn't be. But the connection with him and Josh Allen is one of the best in the league. I believe he'll continue to produce in that high-powered offense. Bills being one of the best offenses in the league. So to me, he's still young enough, and he still will be able to perform well for your dynasty teams. And lastly, I got Tyreek Hill. I considered possibly putting him down due to the our knowledge of him retiring in 2 seasons. I felt like it could have been a little bit of an overreaction by me, so I decided to keep him in tier 2. Obviously, he had an unbelievable season with Miami. I expected a drop off from Kansas City. He proved me wrong. Can't see why he wouldn't continue to produce like he did last season.
Yeah, I completely agree with Tyreek Hill, man. He proved me wrong too. I was expecting the drop off just with the play from Tua, or from going to Mahomes to Tua in Miami, and boy, did he just prove us wrong. And Tua was able to support him and Waddle in that offense, which was pretty impressive. But yeah, I like your tier 2. I like your placement of AJ Brown as well. I know you were saying people could put up with tier 1, but I still do have him a tick below the top 3 guys you'll mention coming up here in your tier 1.
Yeah, so in tier 1, the first player I got on there is Justin Jefferson. He is the true alpha receiver in this group. He had an unbelievable season in Minnesota. And the question will be, what's going to happen at quarterback? Is Kirk Cousins going to continue to be the quarterback there? Or will Kevin O'Connell decide to draft one in this year's draft, or possibly look to get a new signal caller in there? He just hasn't been able to really perform while he's under the lights. But Jefferson, he's young, he's extremely talented. It's hard to not put him one after the just amazing season he had last year. Then I got Jamar Chase. Honestly, these guys could be 1A and 1B. Out of LSU, and interestingly enough, his teammates. But again, Chase, fantastic player. Has had some health issues, but him and Burrow, and this connection with them is probably the best in the league. And they have that familiarity with each other because they played at LSU. So he definitely is a tier 1. These guys are, I think, obvious tier 1s. And lastly, you got CeeDee Lamb. I do think, and I did think about possibly having Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase alone at tier 1. Because I do think there is a gap between CeeDee Lamb and those 2 guys. But at the end of the day, I stuck him in tier 1 because we got to see what he was able to do last year as the primary receiver in Dallas with Dak Prescott. I think he really did take a step forward. And because of his youth, I think at the end of the day, I think he belongs in that tier 1. But if you were to put him in tier 2, I wouldn't blame you, because I do think that Jefferson, Chase are the cream of the crop.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Steve. I mean, Jefferson and Chase definitely is a 1A, 1B. They're pretty interchangeable as far as, guys you would want for the dynasty leagues. And, I think it was fair for you to put in Lamb along with those guys in the tier. I mean, definitely could make the argument, he's a tick below to the tier 2, but I don't really have an issue with you putting him there.
So that concludes our top 50 Dynasty wide receiver rankings with tiers. If you enjoyed this content, we ask you to please like this video so others can find it. Put your comments below on your reactions to our Dynasty wide receiver tiered list. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we also have joined Apple and Spotify podcasts as well. But thank you so much for watching, and until next time.